Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Happy game day, everybody. Preseason game number 2. Actually get some starters tonight. So this is going to feel like an actual full-on, for a quarter, maybe a little more, dress rehearsal. I'm pumped. I can't wait. Really psyched.
Yeah, when we were done recording Thursday, I believe it was, the Ravens news came out that they canceled those joint practice. And I went, oh, that means Monday's going to mean something, actually. Because I was actually thinking this, too, all summer long. How are they going to cram in a joint practice in between these two games? And lo and behold, both teams decide not their thing anymore. So, yeah, I'm pumped for tonight as well that we get to watch some actual starters here.
Yeah, it's yes, it was a mutual choice. It's my understanding that the Ravens were the ones that actually made the call and wanted to change it. So, but I agree. Like, I felt all along, I'm like, Monday night game, joint practice, Saturday. Obviously, none of the starters are going to play on Saturday because it's preseason game 3. Still, that is a lot, in the course of a week. And once that Monday night thing came out, I was like, man, that's a lot for the course of a week. So, who knows, better off. But I think the Commanders still wanted to go through with it. So, but, they agreed to do it. And for all the reasons why the schedule is so weird, I understand why it is. And I agree. Like, tonight becomes a way bigger deal. So we get the starters tonight. We get a look at the offense. I want to start there because I really think, like, we've talked about this a lot through the first month. It just hasn't been clicking. And then Cliff Kingsbury, which you weren't on the show with me on Friday, right? Cliff Kingsbury was very pointed about the offense. And I'll just give you my read on what he was saying the other day. I thought what he said on, I think it was Friday. Maybe it was Friday. I'm a little turned upside down because the schedule's so crazy.
Okay.
I think it was Friday that he did his press conference, he and Joe Witt. And a week before, and we flagged it, I go, this was about as pointed as he's been. It was like the week or two before the Patriots game, where he basically said, we're putting people on the outside that we wouldn't normally put on the outside, but it's giving them opportunities and we're getting to see what they can do out there. However, if I had the full deck of players, I think we would treat this a little bit differently. And, you're seeing some of the after effects of that. It was basically what he was saying, right? Because, we've been talking about that the offense had been struggling to kind of find its identity, find its way. This past Friday was the first time that I heard him be as pointed about anything. And because he's typically very guarded. And he basically, more than anything, I think insinuated to me, if we start slow, don't come at me, because I've been given what I've been given at this point in time. It is time for the business cycle to end. We need our people back, and there's still plenty of time, but we need to get on the field and practice with one another. And so it all just one validated look, like the offense is not at the spot I think anybody wants it to be right now, but there's time, but the clock is ticking. And all he was saying was the clock is ticking. So tonight's a big deal. And for other reasons, which we'll talk about, in a minute, these other things that have been happening on the side, specifically with one guy, need to come to an end because this team needs to get its you-know-what together because in 3.5 weeks, we have a game. So that's all he was saying. That's how I read it. I actually thought it was time. Somebody basically said that, and I'm glad it was put out in the public.
Yeah, when it comes to this, I think Cliff as the one that literally has the most to lose with Terry not being around, and I think it was finally time that his frustration boiled over. He hinted at it, like you said, in New England, and then all of a sudden last week, on Friday, he finally just let it rip, and I was like, all right, like someone finally had to do it, and then comes off PUP, which everyone now questions, like, what does that actually even mean, going into this week, essentially, because it's not like he's going to play tonight. I think that'd be stupid, actually, to just play him outright like that. But
no, he's not playing tonight. He's not playing tonight.
Right, right.
He's out. He's not playing tonight.
Yeah. Right, but I'm saying, like, that would have been dumb regardless. So what happened there too is like, I think we got a little hint of it, like a little crack in the armor with Quinn too, last week a little bit, where Quinn was kind of like, it just seemed like he was over it essentially. And so I'm not surprised that things have, essentially
Me
boiled
too.
over.
Actually, you know what? Me too. I'm over it too. Like, it's time. The time to do the business ended a while ago. That's where I am on this. It's just time to come to a conclusion and move on. Like, that's however it ends. Like, play out the last year of your contract, get a new contract, or I don't even want to say it, like whatever the other options are, but it's just time for it to come to an end. Look, there's trades happening around the league now because it's time for it to end. Who's on the team and who's not? It's time to move on.
I think mid last week, I kind of had this thought process of like the fan base and the media are over it, but how long is too long for Terry and how long is too long for the team? We're hitting that point right now for both of them of like, how detrimental are you going to make it heading into this season and make it a factor of a slow start? I said to you, I flagged it 2 or 3 weeks ago saying this can't be the Bengals, where the Bengals started slow last year and it quite literally costed them, a playoff spot. I know it wasn't the offense's fault per se, but momentum was stagnant heading into that first month of the season. And we saw it too. The Commanders beat them on the road, right? Like, that was a factor. And the way that the schedule is laid out this year, the way that this team is built, they just cannot afford a slow start. And I told you 2 games in 5 days is starting to worry me. And now it's really starting to worry me as this thing comes to a close.
So, all right. So Terry comes off PUP, and you said, what exactly does that mean? And this is just my opinion on it. Okay. And I felt like all along, actually, that the team has handled this whole situation really, I think, very gingerly with him. Like, they have not said anything negative about him. They have not revealed a single thing about what he's asked for, which is why we're still here. And you got people, speculating, like he asked for this, he asked for that. I think we can all agree that it is very possible that it is in the ranges that people are talking about. The fact that there is nothing done does suggest there is a gap between what he wants and what they want to give him, whether it's years, money, both, whatever it may be. Where does he see himself amongst the best receivers in the NFL? I don't want to go through all of it because we've been through all of it a million times, but the reporting has never been specific. Okay. It's always been in ranges. So the team hasn't outed him for what he wants. His side hasn't outed the team for what they've countered with. Both sides seemingly, this conversation wouldn't even be happening if both sides didn't want to actually accomplish a long-term deal. So I think the goal there was always kind of in place, and I don't think it ever really went away. I couldn't say now, right? Like, he doesn't show up to the mandatory stuff in the spring. He then has a hold out, which turns into a hold in. Them putting him on PUP it's not doing him a favor, but it is limiting the pressure that goes on his camp for sure. And I'm not trying to downplay, because everyone wants to downplay an ankle injury. I'm not going to do that because I don't really know, how injured he was or anything like that. But it does serve as a, not cover, but a way for him to not be forced to be on the field every single day while they're still talking, right? And, so I think the team, and Perry probably doesn't want to hear this, but I actually think the team has really done, at least in this regard, about as right by him as they possibly could do to this point by not outing him for what he wants, not making the negotiations public, never saying a thing like suggesting in any way, shape, or form that they don't love him, respect him, want him here, and don't want him to be anywhere else. Like, there's been nothing like that whatsoever. And when he did come back to camp, to avoid getting fined, they made sure that there was a way for him to have, an ability to not have to be on the field every single day. Well, it's the middle of August now. And if there's one thing I would say that, that I would point to the team and say, this is where I think you guys need to put your foot down. And you have to figure out how you want to put your foot down, but put your foot down on this whole thing is you've got to force the issue now because we're running out of time. And, if I was going to nitpick anything that's happened here, I think when we talk about we've been over it for a while, we've been over it because we need to know whether he's going to be out there and playing. And it's just time for this to come to an end. The time to have a negotiation, in my opinion, is over. It is time to figure out what happens next. And I would say that could have happened a week ago. And that would be the only kind of nitpicky thing that I would say about from the team side, where I actually think, and Terry's not going to agree with this because he's not getting the deal that he wants, at least not to this point. But I actually think that they've handled this about as professionally as they possibly could have like put him in the least pressured position of the two sides up to this point. But now it is up to him whether he wants to put on the uniform and play, regardless of what the contractual terms are, because he is under contract. And if there's anything that I would nitpick about this process is I probably would have thought about doing this about a week ago, just to push the button to say, it's go time now. Are you in or are you not in? And I think that's where we are at this point.
I will correct you on one thing. The team definitely pushed back when they released he's asking for DK Metcalf money. Like, that was the only thing.
They never said that.
I know, but like we can deduce from the way that reporting happens that was definitely coming from someone on this side. Is it officially someone with the team? I don't know, but you and I know how this works. Like, they were getting bashed over the head. I will
say, though, they never outed whatever his first ask was. And think about what the reporting is there, which is like, I don't know. Like, I've been saying this forever. I don't know what he's asking for, but I can deduce that it is something that was going to be a non-starter as a conversation. And there was a couple of people saying, like, I thought Charles Robinson said it best when he said they were stunned by what he asked for initially. For months, we kept saying, we don't know what he's asking for because they didn't out him about it. They never put that in the public sphere.
Right. But they did. I think this is just my opinion. I think they definitely put that number out because they were getting bashed over the head for a month of it's Terry. You got to help him turn off. And what did that do? That turned the tide of the conversation to, oh, well, if that's what he's asking for, that's a little crazy. Or there was a discourse around it, right? There's still a discourse around whatever the number is. You had Keim last week with his piece saying they wanted to do something probably in the $28 million range or whatever that is. But that was the first time we finally were getting the numbers finally back to like shrinking down to getting to something they might possibly agree upon.
That was when we talked about it last week. I said, the craziest part is if that's the number it ends up at, then I think this could have been settled 3 months ago, because that felt like the compromised number. His market value, according to, like many around the league, is somewhere in that Cortland Sutton range. But because he's Mr. Terry and because he's very special here and because of his consistency and because of his true statement that he has played less than some of these other people that are at his age, I feel like that there is a premium for that and there's a bump over that. And it gets up to a number that felt like what Keim posted. And I think a lot of us that have just kind of looked at the contracts, looked at his deal, wondered what it would look like, have always landed around that number. And so I was the whole time, I'm like, if that's where it ends up, it's just crazy it didn't happen 3-4 months ago before the mini camps occurred, because we all kind of felt that that's where it would be. But clearly either that's not enough or the team isn't getting quite there. And, something has to be done though now. And so this, Cliff said what he said. They did this the next day. They didn't ask. He didn't come out to practice. And Quinn, provided just because he's off a pup doesn't mean he's going to be out here. Like it's going to ramp up to playing again. But basically the first lever was pulled by the team to go, it's time. Okay. It is time. We can't sit in limbo forever any longer. We have just a few weeks to go and we need to know if you're in or you're not in. And oh, by the way, we don't need to remind you of this, but you are under contract for this year. So it is time for you to decide, since you're under contract, are you going to literally withhold your services? And I'm hoping that the end result is they just get a deal done with each other, and neither side will be perfectly happy, obviously, at this point, but they just get it done for the betterment of his career, for this team now and into the future. But if they can't, we need to know now instead of any time, past this week, are you in? And that's why I think pushing that button was very important. And that's the only thing I would nitpick. I would have pushed that button. I would have been a little more impatient than Adam Peters was. I might have pushed that button just a little bit sooner to try to get an answer a little bit sooner about where he stands on potentially playing on the last year of his contract.
I think, the other factor that I think started to, have the tide turn on them this weekend was his agent. I think people are starting to realize too, like, we don't know what advice he's getting or how much it's coming from him or his agent, but all the factors are sitting there that we've talked about a million times over about the age, what age he'll be at the end of this contract, the position the team is in. We talked about it too. Keim put in the best wrinkle, I think, of that we've heard in this conversation of you can't set a precedent with an older player when they have all these older players coming up for contracts. Like, I think at this point too, I think he got bad advice from his agent for how long this has gone on. Because, as you said, the team
I mean, to me, that's not even in question. And I think, like, how we've been talking about this, and I don't like to be blunt about it, but I've been kind of the whole time being like, I'm not really sure what he's asking for. Like, where is he coming from with some of this stuff? Is it really, he doesn't have the leverage? Like, I love Terry, but like I do feel like there is, whether it's his own opinions of it or his representation's opinions of it or a combination of it, I don't think that, that it's been well-founded in his thinking. That's all, and so wherever it's coming from, that's where I've been on it. But now that we're at this point, the only thing I would say is the team needs to force the issue. And I just would have done that a little bit sooner, but that's just nitpicking, here. Like, trying to get a gauge of understanding exactly where both sides have been. I do understand where the team's position was, and I've kind of been on their side the whole time, because I just feel like there's no world in which, where you have a salary cap, this isn't baseball, where you just go, okay, just give him what he wants. Like, when anybody said that to me the whole time, I'm like, you can't do that because you don't know what he wants. And if you give him something that's prohibitive 2 years from now, you're gonna want to fire Adam Peters for doing it. You can't do things like that.
The factor here that I was going to get at, though, was I think his agent dug in too much. I think if you were to ask Terry probably would have been more open to talking about these numbers, but it seemed like, one, they were both so dug in, and at the same time, are you really going to go up against Adam Peters? You're going to be the first one to actually go up against him in this crazy kind of, holdout. He's going to make sure that you don't kind of, like ruin his reputation. Like you said, you'd want to fire him if this was a bad deal. You can't, you can't get everything you want out of this, especially when they were at such a stalemate for so long too. It tells you, what were the actual negotiations like? Because I don't think they actually were. And I don't even know if this was one side or both sides, but either way, they were not talking for so long. And now we're finally at this point where it seems like Terry and his camp maybe are bending a little bit here. But I'm not going to believe it until we actually see a deal here. And this is what sucks, is the season is literally 3 weeks away at this point, and he hasn't set foot on the practice field. Everybody's worried about it now too.
Yeah. It's just time. That's all. Like, we've run out of time. Business time's over. You have to make a decision, and you are under contract. So what are you going to do? And, oh, by the way, Terry, we need you. Nobody's suggesting otherwise. Yeah. Listen to Cliff the other day, who was more than honest. This is the first. God, it was all gumdrops and sunshine last year. So this has been the first real issue that they've run into, as a group. And so, like, how they handle it's going to be judged. And I think the team has gone out of its way to try to not publicly make this acrimonious. They've stayed very quiet about all of it. And but now's the point where you have to decide whether you want to be there or not. And everyone continues to talk about him like, well, he'll be out there on the field soon. Well, that's up to him now, actually. And so now the pressure's on him to go, okay, are you willing, if worse comes to worse, to just play out the contract? And that's where I think we are. The other one that popped up, obviously, yesterday online was Jordan Schultz reporting that Brian Robinson is being shopped by the team. I have no knowledge of that, so I'm not going to confirm or deny it. So I don't know, but I'm not, going against his reporting. I just don't have I have no information on that. Ben Standig, a few days ago, made a case on his Substack, because he writes on a Substack now, that he believed that Brian Robinson's spot was in jeopardy for a variety of reasons. One, that he makes, it's not a ton of money in NFL terms or cap terms, but it's a lot of money if you're not going to be the number one primary running back. He is in the last year of his deal. We do know at the end of last year that, he wasn't as productive. I don't think the team was particularly pleased with the production out of the running backs just in general. Eckler got hurt. Robinson was not producing the same way. Some of it might have been some banged up injuries. Others of it, or other things, in regard to his production that they didn't love. So when Ben wrote this a week ago, this was kind of a narrative I've been watching the whole time. And we've been talking about this one too for a while, where I kind of put it this way. I don't know what the running back room is going to shake out to be. I don't know who's going to get a lion's share of the carries. This thing screams running back by committee the whole time because it doesn't feel like there's a bell cow. Eckler at this stage of his career and off the season that he had, I can't imagine they're figuring him for a bulk amount of carries. I think they're thinking of him, trying to use him selectively, and there might be some games where he actually gets a ton of carries and a ton of work, and there are going to be others that he doesn't. They like Bill, Ja'Cory, Krosky, Merritt, but, are they going to throw him out there in prime time and make him a starter? I will tell you something Quinn told me about him as I was getting ready for the game. Like, he described this time of year for him. He said, this is a good time for him to get out there and make some mistakes and kind of learn, and learn on the fly and learn on the job, which to me leads to, would lead to a belief that they do believe that he could play a prominent role for them. How much of a prominent role? Is he a bell cow? No, he's not either. But like, he and Eckler, and then McNichols, who they like on special teams, but I don't think will ever become a 15 carry back for them, but he could every once in a while, like he did last year, have a couple of games where he has more carries than you would expect. They've got a couple of other players. Cliff said this a number of times. Demetric Felton's played in the league for a long time. Chris Rodriguez has been here for a few years. They did re-sign him and bring him back. So all along, I've been saying, like, this running back room is going to be interesting. I don't see this is your 20, touch guy on this team. I don't see one of them like that. So they're going to be by committee. The question is, what is his role in that committee the whole time? And off of last year, where we were screaming, they've got to get more productive playmaking ability out of every skill position set, but specifically running back, because like, even I during the draft was going, I don't know, man, I would take Travion Henderson if it were me in the second round, if it got to me and he was there. So I'm not denying the reporting at all. I don't know that, like, I can't confirm or deny that, but his future, not being secure, that's not, to me, a massive surprise here.
Yeah, and everyone you named there, most of them have some other kind of role on the team as well. Like, Eckler does return kicks still, right? Some of them also play special teams. Krosky Merritt's a rookie. I'm not going to knock him for having an extra role here, but B-Rob for what he brought to the table last year. And I was talking with someone about this over the weekend. Last year wasn't the first time that he kind of fell off from production. This has happened multiple times throughout his career where he starts off strong, or he gets hurt, or, he just falls off in the second half. He's got a little bit of a track record now that I don't think you can rely on him for 17 games. And if you're Adam Peters and company, you're kind of saying to yourself, well, he's a little pricey. And I kind of floated this out to you last week, where in training camp, we see this all the time. You float a player out that you've, got extra position players at, and you try to get another position player back. So maybe there is a team out there looking for a spark at running back. They make a trade, and maybe this team gets a defensive player or a veteran wide receiver or whatever you need, or whatever Adam Peters thinks that he wants. Maybe he gets that back as well here. I think that's a real factor there too, of maybe you find the right trade partner after this second preseason game and see where you can shake up the roster just a touch.
I saw that John Mechie deal with the Eagles yesterday, and I'm like, Joe Mixon's been banged up. Like, I wonder, right. Who knows? Because, like, considering how much uncertainty there is at receiver with Terry's immediate future, is he, I want some definitive answers. Like, I think we all do about him. And then Noah Brown, they keep talking about relying on him. He hasn't practiced in a while. I think they feel like they're going to ramp him up ready to go. But, like, I think it would be a little optimistic to think that he's going to be available to them for 17 games this year too. So receiver's a spot that I'm watching here as we kind of come down the stretch. And this is this newfound trading season that everybody's like suddenly become a part of. Before you actually make decisions next week on your 53-man roster, is there a move to make with somebody that we might just end up cutting? You'll recall Noah Brown ended up coming here after the 53-man cuts. So that's still open season too for the GMs to try to find some help at other spots. But I I read this reporting this way. That if something came along that was of interest to them because of all the reasons we talked about, then they may take it seriously and move him. But I don't think it means that he's definitively not on the team. I would put it, that's the way I would put it. I don't necessarily think that he's definitively off of the team by reading this. However, it being out there, does lead me to believe that they would be really open to a discussion about it for all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah, exactly right. And I just think, once again, too, the track record is the track record. And we talked about it last year. Like, they would give you a chance if you weren't, if you were part of the previous regime, obviously, but they're not particularly attached in any way to the players that were here before, too.
Yep. All right, let me take a quick break and we'll get back into the preview of the game next. Bram, watch the show. ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. All right, so it is Bengals and Commanders tonight. We are going to see a lot of the starters, at least from Cincinnati. They've been talking about it. The Commanders are going to send out not everybody, but like a good amount of them. Laramie Tunsil is not playing tonight. Brandon Coleman still hurt, hasn't come back to practice. He's not playing tonight. Obviously, Sam Cosby isn't. So that's 3/5 of their eventual offensive line that is still not going. Zach Ertz is also not going to play tonight. So that's going to be an interesting one. I'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about the running backs for a minute, because off of the rumors of B-Rob being shopped, I think we're all going to be very, very interested to see who runs out with the first team offense now, and who gets the first shot with Jaden and company, because Quinn was not clear with me exactly how long he expects the starters to play. It could be a series, could be two, might be a quarter. I don't know. We'll see. But, if number 8 doesn't run out there, like immediately, I think it will be a validation of these kind of trade rumors, because all of the running backs are up, including Eckler tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the other factor here too. We've been talking about Terry McLaurin all summer long. Do B-Rob and his agents decide, hey, we don't want him playing tonight if you're going to trade him anyways, right? Like, that could also be a factor here as well. I don't know what he's thinking, but I'm with you. Let's see if or when he even comes into this game. Yeah, it'll be really, really interesting. I'm honestly more interested to see who's playing in his place. Is it going to be Eckler right away? Is it going to be Bill? Because I think they were kind of, letting Bill play in the, the second half of last week's game too, for a reason, probably because he was just a younger player. But do they bump him up a little bit? I thought on the depth chart, that was a little bit of the odd one out, where he was last out of all the running backs. I'm very interested to see when or if he comes out, when both of them come out at this point.
I think I maybe mentioned this last week. I don't remember, but Eckler in one of the practices he looked really good last week. I think they've probably, because of his age, because of his experience, because he, to me, is a lock, to make the team for all the variety different ways that he can help them, whether it's kick returns, as a running back, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a dynamic playmaker for them. I don't think, because of age and injury history, that you can look at him and put a huge workload on him. But I do believe that he's one of the most versatile backs on the team. And last week was one of the first ones where I noticed him having that speed. And I'm pretty sure I talked about it, but the days are all spinning in my head at this point. He looked good. The best way I could put it is he looked really good last week. And, maybe that's part of it too. Maybe they feel very comfortable that he's going to be able to produce the way that they're accustomed to him producing. They might have wanted to slow roll him throughout the spring and summer. He was coming off, a couple of concussions a year ago. You want to be careful with someone like this. So it will be interesting. And I'll reiterate what I was told about Bill, which basically was they do like him. They really like him a lot. I'm not running out to use a first round pick in my fantasy draft on him, at this point. I don't think he's going to come out and be shot out of a cannon as a number one primary heavy workload running back, because it was described to me as like they want to get him out there and let him real time make some of the mistakes and hopefully, learn from them before we get to the real games. So I'd like to see how much he plays tonight. He did suffer a little shoulder injury in the New England game, but he's fine and he's up tonight, and they told me he's fine. So the running back rotations, obviously, in light of the reporting on B-Rob, a really big deal tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think if we're looking at any kind of factor on this offense that, I'd say the wide receivers have an excuse, right? Because they are expecting a number one to be added to that group by, game one or whatever. I think the running backs are one of the few positions, and we're going to get to one in just a sec, but where I think we're going to see a bunch of different players play throughout the season.
Yes.
And I think we're going to get a good hint of who those players are going to be off of what happens tonight, because we haven't had much of a look at that. Honestly, we haven't had any look at the starting offense because they didn't play last week. We only got to look at the joint practice.
I'll do quickly the tight ends. Zach Ertz is not playing this evening. He's one of the veterans that will be out. This is worth watching too. Okay, this is really worth watching too. Ben Sinnott feels like, because of his draft status from a year ago, is a lock. I've talked a lot about this. Is a big year for him, right? Really, really, really big year for him. They really like Colson Yankoff. Like he's developing for them. He's kind of Taysom Hill-ish. He was formerly a quarterback. He's a really good athlete. He's very willing participant on special teams. John Bates obviously is a lock to make the team, but kind of at a very different position. Cole Turner's still hanging around, still having opportunities. Lawrence Cager made a nice play. He's a veteran. He's kind of, to me, the insurance policy if Ertz, got dinged up, which obviously hasn't happened, but like he's a veteran and he's been around. He made a nice play in the first preseason game. I want to watch this position group too. This is interesting now. Like Ertz isn't going to play. Who runs out with Jaden, right? Like now, who goes out there? I'm assuming it's Sinnott, but let's see. Let's see what happens tonight.
Yeah, this was the other position group that I was referencing because Zach Ertz is the stone cold lock starter, but I've said it. I think Sinnott is a candidate to be the surprise cut. We haven't seen anything from him. I know he's made a couple of plays during camp, but it's been a kind of the word they always use is competition. And I just don't know if Sinnott has been good enough to earn a spot on this roster. They're going to take the best players, into the season that they think are going to actually contribute. And is Sinnott a part of that? I literally don't know, but I will say this, at least he's got an opportunity, before anything actually ends up happening, he'll have an opportunity with the starting offense if he's out there with the starting offense, because we don't know if that's going to be the case or not. But Sinnott has just always screamed to me somebody that needs to show a little bit more. And I'm not blaming him on that last year because you're a rookie and Ertz is in front of you. But we both talked about how this was a huge summer for him moving forward with the team. And if he's out there tonight, I'd like to see just something from him because I just don't think we've seen enough at this point.
The receivers are going to be interesting tonight. Debo is up, so I'm presuming he's going to make his debut. He's looked terrific in camp, so I'm very excited to see him and what they do with him tonight. Obviously, I don't think you want to show much to the Giants about how you intend to kind of line him up. So I think, I'm not going to take a lot. I'm not going to put a lot into whatever he does because I think this is one of the people you want to hide. I don't think you want people to know what you're going to do with him until the time comes around. But as Cliff has pointed out, Terry is not playing tonight. Noah Brown is not playing tonight. Who's on the outside? They've described this as they've been experimental with it because they're trying to figure out what to do. Jalen Lane was a slot receiver until he wasn't any longer, and over the last week was playing on the outside. Luke McCaffrey kind of is a slot receiver, was moved out to the outside. They have a couple of veterans, KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup. Will they get more run with the ones tonight than does Lane get it? Does McCaffrey get it? Does one of those veterans get it? Is that a sign of which of those players, if not both of them, are going to end up making the team? There's a lot going on tonight, especially on the offensive side of the ball. There really, really is just a lot going on tonight. A lot of subtext that's happening here and a lot of just watch who gets the opportunities because I think it's going to tell you a lot about what's going to happen over the next week.
Well, and especially, too, of the uncertainty of the offense in general, like how smooth is this thing going to run with all the players that we just named, right? If there's a concern heading into the season, it is that the offense is not seemingly clicking as well as it did last year. And this is a factor of all of the guys that end up playing here. I just want to see this, too. I know none of the starters played in New England, but it was the most concerning thing of like, so many penalties, kind of sloppy. I hope they also just play clean too. Like yes. I hope that's a factor tonight too as well. That was one that was a little unsettling, but same thing. I understand 30 players weren't playing last time. Let's see what happens this time around with most of the starters.
I don't know who tweeted. I saw it this morning. Someone put out a tweet this morning, and it was basically like, I am so tired of the preseason storylines with this team. And I was like, you know what? I didn't see it coming like this because I never envisioned the Terry thing going on the way that it's gone on. Because it has, it's been a very interesting summer with this offense. And I'm not saying that he's the reason why it's been up and down like this, but it's not even been up and down. It's been more, they just haven't been gelling. And Cliff all but confirmed it. And like what I heard from him the other day, basically was, y'all are going to yell at me if we start slow or the offense doesn't look right at the beginning of the season. And I'm trying to tell you right now that I need my guys, right? And I need them now because I need to start practicing with all of them now so that we can avoid that. That's what I heard him saying. And I think he's 100% right. And I've been waiting for somebody to say it for a while because the offense hasn't really gelled throughout the course of the summer. They've had good moments. I thought they looked pretty good up in New England in that joint practice, actually. During the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage, they did not. Like the defense really dominated that. The later practices this past week leading into this game, they looked a little bit better and a little more in sync, and Jaden looked pretty good. And so for all of those reasons, I'm like, all right, let's just take a breath here for a minute. But I do feel like that tweet was everything to me. This has been a little suffocating this summer with more kind of question marks than I really expected heading into the season.
No, I think I kind of called this heading into the preseason where I was like, where are the battles on this roster? Like, where are the big storylines here besides the rookies? But the rookies are a built-in, baked-in storyline every single year. There hasn't been, and that's mainly because the way that the roster is constructed. There's not a lot of surprises happening here of people that are going to sneak onto the team, etc., because of the depth at positions that we've seen and we've talked about. I think we literally just talked about the two positions that we circled before. Running back, of how that's going to shake out, and tight end. I think that was there's two of the positions that we talked about heading into the preseason of those are some places where there could be some movement. Other than that, the way that the roster has shaken out, it's been a non-factor kind of storylines because that's just the way that the roster is constructed and who is on the team at the moment.
And it's only a non-factor if everything just feels like it's running smoothly. And on one side of the ball, it just hasn't been.
Sure.
So it's become a dominating storyline now. I've been talking a lot about the other side, which is the defense, I think, is heading towards, at least looks like, it's going to be more formidable and better than it was a year ago. And they're definitively going to play the style that Joe Witt and Dan Quinn are much more known for and accustomed to, that became the turnover machines. Most recently with the Dallas defenses, they didn't have the personnel to do it a year ago. They didn't have a good set of pass rushers, and they really didn't have what I think were any kind of certainty on the back end, especially at the corner position. Different year, like very, very, very different year. Well, guess what they get tonight? I mean, this is the most prolific passing offense in the NFL. Some of the stats skew as to why the numbers are so crazy. Like Jaden threw the ball. What is the number? I got to look it up. Burrow threw the ball like 652 times last year. Jaden threw it 480. So there is a volume part of what Cincinnati has done and the numbers that they have. That said, if I had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, I also would probably, if I was their offensive coordinator, throw the ball a bazillion times, because the more times you throw it, the more likelihood that one of them busts off some massive play and breaks a game wide open. This is an incredible test. Like, this couldn't be more perfect for what they've been trying to build. They're going to throw the starters out there, not all of them, but the majority of them. Go take on the best passing offense in the NFL, who's taking this summer seriously and trying to prove that they're in sync so they stop a slow start. And oh, by the way, that's the best quarterback receiver duo going in the NFL right now. Let's see how you handle that. So this is a great test tonight.
No, on top of that, too, the Bengals kind of know, the offense knows that they have to survive these shootouts that they were doing. That's what they were doing last year as well. And then we had Joe Burrow and MVP talks by the end of the year. Last year. This is a great test, specifically for Amos, I think. Let's see how he factors in tonight. Let's see if he gets a couple balls thrown his way. Same thing with Lattimore. Lattimore is going to be tested as well. So yes. I'm pumped to see how the secondary does against this offense, because it is a pass-heavy offense, and it's a legitimate test. Let's see how they hold up, and do some of those frustrations stay bottled in tonight for that.
Yeah, do they? It'll be a very, very good question. The other thing you were talked about, how it was a little sloppy up there. Cincinnati's was too, and on special teams. They had special teams issues against Philadelphia. a week ago as well in their preseason game. So both teams have some stuff to work through on kickoff and punt return. Washington's punt returns were a little ineffective in the few that they got a week ago. We know what happened on kickoff return. Henderson had the touchdown. Antonio Gibson ripped off a big one. The Bengals similarly had penalties on special teams, gave up a couple big returns as well. So both of these teams need to fix that tonight. So while that's not the prevalent issue for both teams, it's a big deal tonight too.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with punt return as well. That was the one that we didn't really talk about much after New England. I want to see how that's shaken out as well as who gets the majority of those as well.
All right, so for those of you on YouTube, I'll see you tomorrow. For those of you listening to the radio show or the podcast, you'll hear from Jeremy Reeves next. Brave Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.